Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem, welcome back to today's Daf Yomi, which is Maseches Rosh HaShanna Daf Beis. Says the Mishnah, Arba'a Rosh Hashannim Heim. There are 4 different types of Rosh Hashanahs. Be'echad beNisan, on the first day of Nisan, Rosh Hashanah l'malachim. That is considered the beginning of the year with regard to kings. So irrespective of when he was appointed throughout the year. Come, Echad beNisan, his year is up, and a new year begins. Now, how is this relevant to us? Let's take a look at Rashi. On the top line, Arba Rosh HaShanna l'malachim. Says Rashi, Regilim hoyu limnois zman shtareis sehem. They were accustomed to dating their documents lishnois hamelech, based on the year of this particular king's reign. Mishana shamad b'hamelech kedamrin meseches Gittin, as we learn in Gemara Gittin. Mishum shalei malchus, to maintain peace and harmony with the king. They would accord him this honor and attribute the dates in their documents to the king's reign. Now, instead of leaving it up to the individual king and reckoning based on when he was appointed, so today is the first anniversary, next year the second anniversary, no. It's not anniversary based. Chachamim established a set time when the year turns over. And Echad v'Nisan was that set time. Even if he was appointed, if he came into office, Shvatu Adar, Kol Sashnosai, Mishigia Nisan, come Nisan, which can be a month or 2 later. His year is up, and going forward, it's year number 2. V'yaschilu limneisloi shana shniya. Taisus asks on Rashi, he says, the dating of the shtaris was not connected to Shalei Malchus. He says that only applied to a get. Why is a get different? In the words of Taisus, he says, Lefishu davar gadol, it's a powerful thing, a get. Umilsa de chashivus, lefish alidei haget muteris l'chol adam b'choshev mishar shtaris. He says that Gemara is referring specifically to a get, and that was dated based on the king's malchus because of Shalei Malchus. But that's only a get because of its added chashivus, has the power to generate a divorce. But otherwise, your typical loan document was not dated based on this reason of Shalei Malchus. Okay, let's continue with the Mishnah, and perhaps we'll keep an eye on Rashi as we proceed. So the Mishnah spoke about the 4 Rosh Hashanah, Echad beNisan, Rosh Hashanah l'malachim, Villa Regolim. So Echad beNisan also applies to Regolim, which the Gemara will explain. Next, Be'echad be'Elul, that's the next Rosh Hashanah, the first day of Elul. What is that? Rosh Hashanah l'Maser Behema is considered the beginning of the year pertaining to Maser Behema. Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Shimon Oimrim, it's not Echad be'Elul, rather Be'echad beTishrei. Let's go back to Rashi, l'Maser Behema. So it's going to be 7 lines from the top. It says Rashi, Shein ma'asrin min hanoiladim b'shanazu, al hanoiladim b'chaverta. So when you separate 1 out of 10 of your animals as a carbon, ma'aser behema, you can mix last year's herd with this year's. Now what's the cutoff point? What determines what's this and what's last? That's what we have at Rosh Hashanah, which is either Echad be'Elul or Echad beTishrei, in which case you can mix last year's crop with this year's. Shein ma'asher min hanoladim b'shana zu, al hanoladim b'chaverto. You can't take maser from this year's animals on last year's. Tichsiv aser to aser, eskvot tvas arecha, hayetze hashana shana shana. Every year has its own distinct maser. Vama mar b'bcheres perek maser behema, b'shtei maser sakasav medaber. The pasuk makes a double reference. Aser to aser, 2 types of maser. Echad maser behema, ve'echad maser dogan. Whether we're speaking about grain, maser dogan, each year is a separate obligation. You can't mix and match. Likewise, when it comes to maser behema, each year's bunch has its own obligation, its own maser behema. And what's the cutoff point? What's considered the deadline? Either Echad be'Elul, or according to the others, Be'echad beTishrei. Continues the Mishnah. In fact, Be'echad beTishrei is a Rosh Hashanah for many other things as well. Rosh Hashanah l'Shanim, it's a new year. V'l'shmitim, v'l'yavles. L'natia u'lirakis. Perhaps let's go back to Rashi again. L'shanim efarish b'gemara. L'shmitin l'yayvlois, which means Misha Nichnas Tishrei, once Tishrei arrives, also Lachrosh, L'Izraim in Torah, land work is forbidden. All the halachas of Shemitah get activated Echad b'Tishrei. Continues Rashi, L'natia. What does that mean? L'minyan shnei arla. We know that a fruit tree is aser ba'achila the first 3 years, it's arla. So you have a natia, a young fruit tree. When does the year begin? Echad b'Tishrei. Says Rashi, Afilu nata ba'av, even though it was planted recently, ba'av. Kol sashnosa rishona l'seif el. As soon as Echad b'Tishrei arrives, the year is up. We begin year 2. It's considered year 2 of Arla. So it's actually a kula, because it's not a full 3 years. It's okay. Ubekula mafarish tam b'gemara, as the Gemara explains. Continues Rashi, li'rakis. Echad b'Tishrei applies to vegetables. L'maser york, pertaining to the halachas of maser, of vegetables. She'ein terminu ma'asrin min hanilkat lifnei Rosh HaShanna al shlachar Rosh HaShanna. You can mix last year's vegetables with this year's. Each crop deserves its own truma and maser. How do you determine crop? When it comes to vegetables, it's different than trees, than grain. Here, it's based on when it was picked. So vegetable picked before Rosh HaShanna belongs to last year's crop. The one picked after Rosh HaShanna is this year's. Next Rashi. Actually, let's go back to the Mishnah. Be'echad b'Shvat. The first day of Shvat is Rosh HaShanna le'ilan. It's considered the beginning of the year pertaining to masers of trees. Kedirei Beis Shammai, that's Beis Shammai Shita, B'Sil Oimrim. Instead of Echad b'Shvat, B'Chamisha Asar Boi, the 15th, what we call Tu b'Shvat. Let's go back to Rashi. Le'ilan. So this is similar to the vegetable concept. You can mix last year's crop with this year's. Le'inin maser. She'en ma'aser and peres ilan shechantu koid mishvat. So in contrast to vegetables, where it's a question of when it was picked, that determines its status. It's attributed to the year that it was picked on. When it comes to ilan, comes to fruit trees, it's determined by when it started budding, when the blossom sheds and the bud is seen. So you cannot be ma'aser, peres ilan, which began to bud before this Rosh HaShanna, which is Echad or Tu b'Shvat. Shechantu koidim Shvat, al shechantu lachar Shvat. You can't do master from last year's fruit on this year's fruit, on the ones that began to bud, to develop after Shvat. Shebe'ilon hoylech achachanota. When it comes to a fruit tree, chanota is the determinant factor. The Gemara will explain why is uniquely related to Shvat. The Gemara will say because the sap starts rising, starts developing at that time. So we have 4 Rosh Hashanahs: Echad b'Nisan, Echad b'Tishrei, Echad b'Elul, Echad b'Tishrei, and Echad b'Shvat. We're going to be still b'Chamisha Asar b'Shvat. Continues the Gemara. L'malachim, l'may hilchasa. We speak about Echad b'Nisan being the starting point of the year. Regarding malachim, l'may hilchasa, what's the point? Explains Rashi. Why was it not individualized? Whenever the king was appointed, that's when his year begins. Why did they establish a set, standard, uniform Rosh HaShanna for kings? Amar Chizah l'shtaris. It's beneficial and needed for documents, for the dating of shtaris. Tisnan, shtari chayv hamugudam and psulim. If a shtar chayv, a loan document, was predated, it's pasul. V'muchar and ksher. If it was postdated, then it's kosher. Perhaps let's go over to Rashi again. Somewhere in the middle of the Amid. Gemara. L'may hilchasa. K'leima. The Gemara means to ask like this. La mahuk ba'yoyim miyuchad l'inyan malachim. Why did they establish a set day as the Rosh HaShanna for kings? Why don't we say, Ema shall kol melech melech taschel shnasam yom she'avad bay. His year begins when he was appointed. The answer is the shtaris. Lahafan. So that you can discern Ezer shtar chayiv mukdam l'malva, Ezer mochar. You can know which star precedes the milva, was dated in advance, which makes it puzzle. Ezer mochar, which one is post-dated, in which case it's kash. This non Masechas Shvius. Shtar chayiv mukdam and psul. his shtar chayv is predated, it's puzzle. Perhaps, let's just speak outside before we see it inside. Why is a predated shtar chayv puzzle and a post-dated kash? Rashi will explain for us as follows. The malve, the lender, has a right to collect from nechasam mishubadim, from assets which were committed to this loan. So when the borrower, the loiva, borrows money, he commits not only himself but also his assets, in which case, if they are sold afterwards, the malve, the lender, can come and collect those assets, take it away from the buyers who should have not gotten themselves into this. They should have checked with the credit bureau before they purchased his assets to see if there's any lien on it. So the malve, the lender, has first rights. Now, if the shtar chayv is predated, then he's going to collect inappropriately. He has no right to collect from the time that the shtar was written, because there was no loan committed at that point. It's before the event. In which case, if assets were sold at that point, before the actual halva took place, he has no right to collect them. And by taking hold of this shtar, which was predated, this will give him unauthorized rights to go ahead and collect those assets, which he shouldn't be collecting. But if it's mu'uchar, if it's post-dated, then it's his choice. It's his loss. He's giving up that avenue, that window of time between the halva and the actual date written on the shtar. He's relinquishing his rights to that period. That's okay. It's his prerogative. So a shtar chayv mukdam, a predated shtar, is puzzle, because he will unjustly collect assets which don't belong to him from the time of the shtar, which is still before the halva, before the lien, before the commitment took place, as opposed to a shtar chayv mu'achar, a post-dated shtar. It's up to him. Okay, he's giving up some rights from the actual halva until that date in the shtar, but that's fine. It's still kasha. Oh, now, as we mentioned earlier, Rashi spoke about the fact that shtaris were generally dated based on the year of the current king in office. So the fact that they established a set standard, Rosh HaShanna for Malachim, that allows us to discern, to define, and to verify whether this shtar is properly dated, whether it's a valid shtar. Why? So Rashi will explain like this. Picture the following case. Adam provided a borrower with his shtar. A loiva decided he wants to borrow money. He goes to Adam, prepare a document for me, and he can do that even before the event. So he wrote him up a shtar, which says, this fellow borrows this much from this person, and it's dated, say, the first day of Kislev, year 3 of this and this year's reign. This and this king's reign, right? Shalish, year Shalish of this king. So it's Aleph Kislev, year 3 of this king. It so happens that the Edom will come back and say, we actually witnessed the transaction, the actual loan, which took place the first day of Tammuz, year 3 of this king. Now, the question is, which one happened first? We're not sure about the chronological order of events here. The shtar says, first Kislev, year 3. The Edom say the loan actually took place first Tammuz, year 3. Now, it all depends when he was appointed king, when he came into office, when he was elected. Right? So if it's individualized, it all depends when he was appointed, and that can create confusion. Why? So Rashi will explain like this. If his year began between Kislev and Tammuz, let's say he was appointed Adar, okay? For example, Adar. And that's when his year begins. So the loan took place Tammuz, year 3. The shtar has a date of Kislev, year 3. Now, if his year begins Adar, then you go up to Tammuz, and then that's followed by Kislev, in that order. So what type of shtar is this? Is it predated or postdated? It's postdated, because the loan took place before the date on the shtar. The loan took place Tammuz, which is before Kislev. So he's good to go. It's the shtar kasha, the shtar mocher. That's if the king was appointed Adar. But maybe the king was appointed Tishrei. His year began Tishrei. Again, if it's individual, so then his year begins at Tishrei. In which case, what comes first? Kislev or Tammuz? You start with Tishrei, you go down to Kislev, that's first, and that's the date on the shtar. Then you go up to Tammuz, which is after. So now this date on the shtar is mukdam, it's predated. And the Malva will collect assets that were sold before the halva. He has no right to those assets. It's a shtar mukdam and it's puzzle. So we'll never know what's happening. If the dating is individualized. But now that the Chachamim saw to it, to establish a set standard uniform system, in which case the year always switches Echad ben Nisan. That's it. Irrelevant of when he was appointed king. So now Nisan is the beginning of the year, followed by Tammuz, followed by Kislev. So you know Tammuz before Kislev, and you know the actual Hava, which was Tammuz, took place before the date recorded on the shtar, which is Kislev. So it's a delayed shtar, a post-dated shtar, in which case it's kosher. That's in a nutshell what Rashi is going to present for us. Let's take a look inside. So it's the first wide line. What's wrong with an advance dated shtar? Because the Malva has an interest to collect assets which were purchased from the Leiva. From when? Starting from the date recorded in the shtar. And that's wrong. It's unjustified. It's not right. Because in actuality, those assets were sold before the transaction took place, before the commitment, before the lien was placed on his assets. Ubishtar made shalva kadma. Whereas in the shtar we see, no, the alva happened first. It's a predated shtar. That's why it's puzzle. It's completely puzzle, says Rashi. We don't allow him to use the shtar at all as proof for his alva. Even if he should decide to forego that extra time, he'll say, you know what? I'm going to collect starting from the actual halva. We don't allow it. We treat it as though it's just a verbal commitment. We disregard this document, which is considered puzzle. He can't collect from anything purchased from the leiva. So that's the general concept. A predated shtar is puzzle. How does that pertain to us? Why does that necessitate establishing a set standard zman pertaining to kings? Had they not set a standard date, el kol melech o melech, lefi yom she'amad, rather each king according to when he was appointed, ein lahavchen. At times you might not discern whether it's a predated or post-dated shtar, because you don't know the order of the months. Kigayin, for instance, for instance, if you have a shtar presented to you which has the following text: first day of Kislev, third day of this king, Reuven borrowed money from Shimon. The Edom will corroborate. They'll say, look, the Levi asked us for a shtar, and we wrote him a shtar. When we gave him the shtar, it's not like we saw it happening. We just gave him a shtar in advance of his halva, as per his request, which is legal. The Levi asked us to give him a shtar, which indicates that he owes money. You can do that. You can provide the Levi with a shtar even before the event, in anticipation of the event. Now, We're not sure when the halva actually happened, but we can tell you this much. Avareinu shilvo mana betamas. B'shana shlishis l'melech Pliny. We did see the following. He lent him money in Tammuz, year 3 of this king. And the shtar says that he lent it to him Kislev, year 3. Now, v'im ein hadayanim yoidim be'ezeh chodesh amat hamelech. Suppose they're not sure when the king was appointed. It's been years ago. They don't know. Ein lahafchen. At this point, we have confusion. Im Tammuz kodim lekislev, im Kislev kodim leTammuz. We're not sure whether the actual halva that took place Tammuz occurred before Kislev, in which case the shtar is post-dated and it's kosher, or it took place after Kislev, in which case the shtar is predated and possible. How is that? If he was appointed between Tammuz and Kislev, his year begins then. Nimtza Kislev kadmol Tammuz b'chol shnoisa. In which case, throughout this entire reign of this king, his year begins between Tammuz and Kislev, let's say a Tishrei, and Kislev comes before Tammuz in the sequence of his year. V'shtar mukdemu. It's an advanced dated shtar. It's possible because the shtar says Kislev, and the event only took place afterwards in Tammuz. On the other hand, v'im amad bein Kislev and Tammuz. If he was appointed between Kislev and Tammuz, say Adar, right? V'im amad bein Kislev and Tammuz la'achrav. So the sequence of events, the sequence of his months, what comes first? Nimtza Tammuz kodim leKislev. Tammuz precedes Kislev in the order of his year. B'chol shnoisav, throughout all his years. Ushtama uchu. So now the loan took place Tammuz. The document says Kislev, so it's a post-dated shtar, it's kosher. So confusion reigns. However, va'achshav shekavu Nisan Rosh HaShanna la'olam. Once we established Nisan as being the absolute standard Rosh HaShanna, la'olam Tammuz kodim leKislev. Now you know what's what and where's where, and when is when. You know that Tammuz comes before Kislev, right? So if you have an edus that there was a halva in Tammuz year 3, and year 3 began Nisan, and you see a shtar which says Echad b'Kislev, you know it's a post-dated shtar, it's kosher. Now Tosfos asks, how likely is it that the Dayanim, everybody forgets when the king was appointed? Why would this create confusion? So Tosfos presents a more simple approach to the Pshat in the Gemara. He says like this: a king was appointed the first day of a month, Echad be'Iyar, let's say. Now, come next year, the Sefer, the scribe writing the document, might have mixed things up by one day. And he's thinking to himself, yeah, I remember the king was appointed the second day of Iyar. And now it's the first day of Iyar, so it's still his first year. His first year is not up. He's going to take out his parchment and write, today, the first year of this king, which is a mistake. He's a year off. It's already the second year, so now it's a predated shtar and it's possible. So rather than the Edom and the Bezdin being confused, it's just a local sefer who might mix it up with one day. And that's the concern here, and therefore, Chacham established Echad b'Nisan is the absolute Rosh HaShanna from Malachim, which provides clarity and avoids any sort of confusion. Continues the Gemara. 6 lines from the bottom. Tana Rabbanan, we learned in a Bryce. We're going to have several applications of this Echad b'Nisan formula. Melech she'amad be'esrim v'tisha b'Adar. Suppose the king was appointed day 29 of Adar, last day of the year. Kiva she'higia Echad b'Nisan. Once tomorrow arrives, Echad b'Nisan dawns on him. Also Shana, his year is up. Going forward, he's in year number 2, even though it was only a 1-day year. However, if he only came into office the first day of Nisan, his year is only up once he arrives at the next Nisan, and then begins year number 2. Let's review the halacha. A king who came into office day 29 of Adar, as soon as Echad b'Nisan arrives, his year is up, he begins year 2. Hakamash 1. The Bryce is coming to tell us 2 things. Number 1, the Nisan Rosh HaShanna l'Malachim, of course. Echad b'Nisan is considered the beginning of his new year. Number 2, V'yayim Echad b'Shana Rosh HaShanna. This is a chiddush. Even though he was only in office one day of the last year, that's enough to be considered a year gone by. And the Brisa continued, however, if he was only appointed the first day of Nisan, his year is only up once he arrives at the next Nisan. Pshita, of course. Isn't that obvious? Like Tzricha, the Chiddush is, suppose they elected him. All the ministers got together, they decided he's going to be the new king. And when did this happen? They voted him in already during Adar. But he actually only entered office Nisan. Perhaps I would think and say, it's already considered year 2 because from the moment he was voted in, he's considered to have been appointed and his reign begins. Kamashmon, the Chiddush is no. Until he actually enters office, his reign has not begun. Tana Rabban, we learned further in a similar brisa, which will present 3 applications of this concept. Number 1, Meis Ba'adar. Suppose a king passed away Adar. V'amad acher tachta ba'adar. The next king was appointed in his stead that very same month, Adar. Mon Jun lazel. You can attribute that year to both kings, to the former and to the current king. What does this mean? It says Rashi on top. 2 lines from the top. If the second fellow was appointed, he sits down. Somebody sits down to write a shtar. How does he relate? He can relate to both kings. He has a choice. He can write, it's this and this year to the former king. Or if he wishes, he can write, well, this is year 1 for the new king. Continues the Gemara. Meis b'Nisan. Suppose he passed away in Nisan. And the second king was appointed in his stead that very month of Nisan. Mon Jun, here as well, this year is considered to both kings. It relates to both kings. You can write, is this in this year to the former king, or is the first year to the new king? Meis Ba'adar. Here comes the third halacha. The king passed away during Chodesh Adar. V'amad acher tachta b'Nisan. New king was appointed only the following Nisan. Moinin Rishon l'Rishon. So last year relates to the past king. V'shni l'Sheni, and this year relates to the new king. Okay, fairly simple. Now we'll review and explain these halachas. Let's go back. Meis Ba'adar v'amad acher tachta b'Adar. Suppose the king passes away during Chodesh Adar, and the new king is appointed in his stead that very same month of Adar. Mon Jun, you have the choice of relating to either king. You can call it year such and such to the old king, or year 1 for the new king. Pshita, well, of course. What else? Perhaps I would think, the Chiddush is, perhaps you can't take 1 year and attribute it to 2 kings. It's either his or either his. Kamashma, the Chiddush is you can. It's a shared year. It belongs to the old king and to the new king. The Brisa continued, Meis b'Nisan. If he passed away during Nisan, v'amad acher tachta b'Nisan, the second king was appointed in his stead during that very month of Nisan. Here again, Mon Jun, this year is shared by both kings. You can attribute it to the former or to the current king. Pshita. Hainuhach, some add these words, Hainuhach. Isn't this the exact case that we just said? Why repeat the same case? Ma'odatema. Perhaps I would think like this. There's room to be mechalik between this case and the former case. Why? When do we apply the concept that having ruled, having been in office for at least 1 day in that year, that is enough to consider that your year? B'Soif Shana, perhaps that only applies at the end of the year. Meaning, suppose he came into office the last day of the year. Since that day is the forerunner of his kingship, right? That's when his reign begins. That gives it chashivas. And since the year just turns over now, Echad B'Nisan arrives, we consider it as year 2. So although it was just one day in office, but it has chashivas because it's leading into the next year. It's starting his reign. But perhaps, suppose the king passes away on the first day of the new year, Echad B'Nisan. Since his reign is up, his malchus has expired. You don't reckon with that one day. We ignore it. And perhaps he doesn't relate to this year. Even in this case, it's considered a shared year. So even if the king passes away at the beginning of Nisan, this year has been identified as his year as well, and is basically shared between the old and the new king. You have the choice. You can attribute it to this king or to this king. So this is a chiddush over the first case. Right? In the first case we had that he died during Adar, and the new king was appointed at the end of Adar. So there we say, well, this year can be related to both kings, even to the new king, who perhaps is only here for one day, last day of Adar, because it's leading into his kingdom, it's leading into his reign. It inaugurates his malchus, has chashivas. But in the next case where the king passed away in the beginning of Nisan, perhaps we could ignore that element. Since his malchus is over, has no chashivas, so B'tchilas HaShanna perhaps we wouldn't say it's considered his year. K'mashmulan we do. This is based on Tosfos' explanation on the Gemara. The third case was Meis Ba'adar v'Omer Da'achar Tachta B'Nisan. Suppose the king passed away Adar, and the next king was only appointed the following month, Chodesh Nisan. Moinin Rishon L'Rishon. So the first year relates to the old king. Ushni L'Sheni, and the second year, meaning the current year, to the current king. Of course, Pshita. Here there's no overlap at all. There's no sharing. He passed away last year. He's appointed this year. Says the chiddush here would be in the following case. What happened was the ministers gathered together and came to consensus to vote him in. And this took place during Adar. That's number one. On top of that, he was from the royal family. Umelech ben Melech. He's the son of a king. So he's really deserving of this position. Rashi brings a Gemara based on a pasuk that Malchus is really Yerusha. You inherit Malchus. So he belongs up there. Perhaps I would say, since both factors are at play. Number one, they voted him in already Adar. Number two, he's deserving of the post. He's Melech ben Melechu. So perhaps he's just a shoo-in. It's just a matter of formality to actually take office. Perhaps his Malchus begins last year, Adar. And now it's already year 2, Kamashmon. The chiddush is no. Fact is, when you take office, that's when your Malchus begins, but not a second earlier. So in conclusion, we had 5 halachas, 5 applications for this halacha of Echad B'Nisan Rosh HaShanna L'Malachim. So you had a case where he came into office during Adar. The chiddush is, even though it's just a short-lived, it's just a day or two. In fact, it was Esrim V'Tisha B'Adar, just one day. As soon as Echad B'Nisan arrives, the next day, it's already considered year 2. However, if he was only Moilech B'Nisan, then his year begins right then, even though we're speaking that they already voted him in Adar. The next price that we discussed, where there was some overlapping. The king died and the new king was appointed during Adar. That year can be attributed to both kings. Likewise, if this happened during Nisan, that year can be attributed to both kings. In the final case we have, where he died Adar, and the new one was appointed Nisan, even though they voted him in Adar, and even though he has royal blood, he's Melech ben Melech, his Malchus only begins starting Nisan. Now the fact that the Gemara asked Pshita, we already know this halacha from the first brisa, is indicative of the fact that the brisas are sort of connected. Tosfos explains that they were taught next to each other, meaning at the same yeshiva, whatever, and that explains the Gemara's kasha. Why speak about a case that we already discussed in the previous brisa? And the Gemara comes out with a maskana that there is a chiddush. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Menayim Malachim she'ein moinen lahem ela b'Nisan. We speak about Echad b'Nisan being Rosh HaShanna l'Malachim. How do we know that? Shenemar, Vahi b'shmoinim shana, va'arba me'es shana. It was 480 years to what? Let's say Bnei Yisrael Meretz Mitzrayim, from Yitzias Mitzrayim. B'shana Revi'is, the 4th year of Shlomo HaMelech's reign, b'chodesh Ziv, the chodesh which is called Ziv, Rashi brings the Gemara later, it's called Iyar, Hu HaChodesh HaSheni, right? The 2nd month of the year. L'melech Shlomo al Yisrael, the 2nd month of Shlomo's kingdom. So you have the pasuk describing the beginning of the Binyan Beis HaMikdash by Shlomo HaMelech, which took place when? Year 480 of Yitzias Mitzrayim, Chodesh Iyar, which happened to be the 2nd month of Malchus Shlomo. Now, why go into this whole elaborate description? Just say it was the 2nd month of Malchus Shlomo, his 2nd month of his 4th year. That's it. Why refer to Yitzias Mitzrayim? There's a lesson here. Makish Malchus Shlomo Yitzias Mitzrayim. The pasuk is trying to connect the Malchus of Shlomo to Yitzias Mitzrayim, that we adopt the same formula to the counting of the years when it comes to kings. Ma Yitzias Mitzrayim Nisan. Just as the yearly count of Yitzias Mitzrayim begins from when? When does the year begin when it comes to counting from Yitzias Mitzrayim? Nisan. Af Malchus Shlomo Nisan, likewise. We speak about which year of the king's reign it is. When does the year begin? What's the starting point? Nisan. That's very good if you know when Yitzias Mitzrayim starts. With Yitzias Mitzrayim Gufa Minol, how would you know that the counting of the years pertaining to Yitzias Mitzrayim begin from Nisan? Minol de Nisan Meninan. How do you know that you count from Nisan? Do a Tishrei Meninan, perhaps from Tishrei. Keep in mind, I'm not speaking about anniversaries or events. In that case, certainly Nisan is the correct reference point because that's when Yitzias Mitzrayim took place. But that's not what we're trying to do when we speak about Rosh HaShanna, annual calculations. It has nothing to do with anniversaries. It's year 480 of Yitzias Mitzrayim because, as per the annual calculations, it's year 480. Doesn't necessarily mean it's exactly 480 years to the day from the event. So how do we know that when it comes to Yitzias Mitzrayim, you start from Nisan? Maybe from Tishrei. Rashi says, we find that Echad Tishrei is Rosh HaShanna for many other things. When it comes to counting years, L'Brias Ha'olam, as we do today, right? This many years from Brias Ha'olam. The turning point is Tishrei. So when you relate to creation, it's Tishrei. And perhaps here as well. When it comes to counting years, even from Yitzias Mitzrayim, the turnover happens Tishrei. We cannot suggest that Tishrei is the starting point of the year pertaining to Yitzias Mitzrayim. Why? Listen to this pasuk. Aaron HaKohen ascended the Or Har, Api Hashem, on the word of Hashem, Vayom Hashem, and he passed away there. When? Vishnasar Boim, let's say Bnei Yisrael Meretz Mitzrayim. This was year 40 from when they left Mitzrayim. The 5th month, which is Av, as Tosfos points out, there's no discussion when it comes to numbers of months. Of course, the pasuk says that Chodesh Nisan is Rishon Hu Lochem L'Chotshei HaShana. Nisan is number 1, Iyar is number 2, Sivan is number 3. Of course, the names of the months were given later, but as per numbers, as per sequence, Nisan is number 1, next month is number 2, etc., etc. So here we're speaking about the 5th month, starting from Nisan, which is in our terms of, right? So this event of Misas Aaron took place when? Year 40 of Yitzias Mitzrayim, 5th month, Bechad HaChodesh, day 1 of 5th month, year 40. Okay. Uksiv, we have a pasuk in the beginning of Devarim, describing a discussion that took place between Moshe Rabbeinu and Klal Yisrael, and took place when? By Ba'arba'im Shana, year 40, so it's the same year, year 40, Ba'ashtei Asar Chodesh, on the 11th month, which we call Shvat, Bechad HaChodesh, the first day of that month. First day of Shvat, year 40, Divrei Moshe V'Goyim. Now, we have 2 psukim describing 2 events, both occurring in year 40. Misas Aaron, Chodesh of year 40. Moshe Rabbeinu's discussion, Chodesh Shvat, year 40. Gemara is assuming year 40 to Yetzias Mitzrayim. What does this prove regarding Rosh HaShanna? When does the switchover take place? It can't be Tishrei, right? Because if you have an event in Av occurring year 40, an event down the calendar in Shvat occurring year 40 as well, and apparently there's no switchover taking place in Tishrei. Otherwise, the event occurring in Shvat would be a year later, year 41. Apparently, the switchover is not between Av and Shvat. The Gemara assumes it's Nisan. So the year 40 began up in Nisan, proceeded to Av, year 40, proceeded to Shvat, year 40. So that proves that when we relate to Yetzias Mitzrayim, the years are determined by Echad ben Nisan. Let's see inside. B'dekoi ba'av, v'kori lo shnas arboim. When the pasuk describes an event taking place in Av, referring to shnas arboim. V'koi b'shvat, and then again, we're describing an event in Shvat, v'kori lo shnas arboim, and again we refer to the 40th year. Mechlal Rosh HaShanna lav Tishreyu. Apparently, Rosh HaShanna is not Tishrei. Otherwise, it would be the new year. The event taking place in Shvat would be year 41. So that proves our point. That Nisan is Rosh Hashanah, not Tishrei. 1 second. Mishlei Mahach Mefarish. The Yetzias Mitzrayim. In the first pasuk describing Misas Haran, we have a clear reference to Yetzias Mitzrayim. It's year 40 of Yetzias Mitzrayim. Elahai. But when it comes to the next pasuk describing Moshe Rabbeinu's conversation with Klal Yisrael, true, we have year 40, but 40 to what? It doesn't say. Elahai Mimayid Yetzias Mitzrayim. How do you know it's 40 to Yetzias Mitzrayim? In which case, we have a riot to your point. Perhaps it's year 40 from when the Mishkan was built, which was actually a year after Yetzias Mitzrayim. Papa. Oh, 1 second. So, maybe you're wrong. Maybe Tishrei is really the trigger point. Is when the year turns over. So you have the incident with Aaron HaKohen in Av, year 40 from Yetzias Mitzrayim. Go down to Tishrei, it changes to year 41 of Yetzias Mitzrayim. But it's only year 40 of Hakamas HaMishkan, which took place a year after Yetzias Mitzrayim. And that's what the pasuk describes when he says, Moshe Rabbeinu spoke with Klal Yisrael during Shvat, year 40. It's year 40 of Hakamas HaMishkan, which was a year after Yetzias Mitzrayim. So again, you haven't proven your point. Answers the Gemara, no. The fact that we have Shnas Arboim mentioned in both psukim, we assume it's referring to the same reference point. Yetzias Mitzrayim. Kedam Rav Papa tells us later in Daf Gimel. We have the extra word Shnas. Right? The word Shnas is unnecessary. It could have just said Arboim, let's say Yisrael. We know it's 40 years. Why Shnas? So the word Shnas is coming to present Exeris Shava. As Rav Papa tells us later, Shnas Esrim Exeris Shava. We have a double mentioning of Shnas Esrim there, and he says, let's connect the two things. They're both referring to the same reference point. Hachanami here as well, Shnas Arboim Exeris Shava. Both mentionings of Shnas Arboim are in relation to the same reference point, Yetzias Mitzrayim. Ma'akan, Yetzias Mitzrayim, just as in the first case by Aaron HaKohen, where Yetzias Mitzrayim is clearly mentioned, so it's in reference to Yetzias Mitzrayim. Afkan, likewise, by Moshe Rabbeinu's discussion with Yetzias Mitzrayim, it's year 40 of Yetzias Mitzrayim, and the fact that an event occurring in Av is not year 40 to Yetzias Mitzrayim, and likewise an event occurring down the calendar year in Shvat is also year 40 of Yetzias Mitzrayim. That's an indicator that Rosh Hashanah will not be Tishrei, because otherwise the event occurring in Shvat would have taken place in year 41, not year 40. That's a raya that the Rosh Hashanah is not going to be between Av and Shvat, and we assume it's Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So now we know that when it comes to establishing the number of years since Yetzias Mitzrayim, the starting point is Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and the fact that the pasuk connects this type of count to the count pertaining to kings, specifically Amelech Shlomo. So now we know Rosh Hashanah L'Malachim likewise is Echad ben Nisan. Continues the Gemara. 1 second. You're assuming everything is in order? Aaron HaKohen's event was in Av, which preceded Moshe Rabbeinu's event in Shvat. How do you know? We know that Ein Muktav wa Muchaber Torah, sometimes things are out of chronological order in the Torah. How would you know the incident occurring in Av preceded the story of Shvat? Perhaps the event in Shvat preceded the event of Av. So now back to the Kasha. Maybe Rosh HaShanna, let's say since Mitzrayim, is Tishrei. So Tishrei begins year 40. We proceed down the year to Shvat, right? Year 40. We go up again to Nisan year till Av, and it's also year 40. Perhaps a story with Shvat happened before a story with Av. You can't say that. It doesn't work. Because we know that Misas Aaron occurred before the other pasuk. The pasuk describing the conversation conducted between Moshe Rabbeinu and Klal Yisrael makes reference to Achrei HaKoisei Sichon, after Moshe Rabbeinu struck down Sichon. And that certainly occurred after Misas Aaron, because Sichon was alive and well during Misas Aaron. When Aaron Kohen passed away, Sichon was alive. So that proves the point. Apparently, the incident with Aaron and Av in Chodesh Av took place before the incident with Moshe Rabbeinu down in Shvat. How do we know Sichon was alive during Aaron HaKohen's Ptira? D'chsiv. Vayishma Knani Melech Arad, the king of Canaan, who the Gemara soon will tell us was really Sichon, heard, and he came running. Ma Shmua Shama Ba. What did he hear? What news arrived to his ears which prompted his arrival? Ma Shmua Shama Ba. Shama Shemes Aaron. He heard that Aaron HaKohen passed away, and the clouds of glory disappeared. In which case, Klal Yisrael were now vulnerable to attack. Because Sova Nitna was just Lechem Yisrael. He figured, okay, time's up. Now I have Rishos, I have the ability to strike against Klal Yisrael. Oh, so it's pretty clear that he was around during Mrs. Aaron. So when he saw the Ananei Kavod disappearing, because when Aaron HaKohen passed away, the Ananei Kavod who were there in his schos dissipated, he figured, okay, this gives the opportunity to battle against Yisrael. That explains the pasuk. The entire nation took notice of Aaron HaKohen's passing, and the drasha is of Amar Avo, Al Tikra Vayiru. Instead of reading Vayiru, they noticed Ela Vayero, Lashon Nifal. They were affected. They were exposed. They were seen by others. Vayera'u, because they were now exposed without the enclosure of the Ananei Kavod. They were now visible. They were exposed. Ki, because Gava Aaron Kohen passed away. Ki also has that application, because. Kedurish Shlakish, Damar Shlakish, Ki, the word Ki has four potential applications, four potential definitions. Ki meshamish bedaldush l'shoines. Sometimes it can mean if, maybe. Dilma, this is a more pronounced question. Dilma, maybe, perhaps. This is referring to something less expected than E. E is like something typical. If this will happen, when this will happen. Dilma is like, really? Dilma, perhaps? It's more of an unexpected situation. Then we have Ella. Ki can mean Ella, but, rather. And Daha, because. Which is actually the definition in our pasuk. Vayiru kol ha'edo ki gava Aaron means like this. Vayiru kol ha'edo. They were now visible, they were seen exposed. Ki, Daha, because of Aaron HaKohen's passing, who took the Ananei Kavod with him, so to speak. Okay, so it's clear that this fellow, the Knani Melech Arad, was around during Misas Aaron. So 1 second, we're speaking about Sichon. What does that have to do with a Knani Melech Arad? Midami Hasam Knan Hachas Sichon. You're certainly right that Vayishma Knani Melech Arad was around during Aaron HaKohen's passing, but how does that relate to Sichon? It's two different people. Right? We said that Moshe Rabbeinu struck Sichon. Achrei HaKoisei Sichon. And that couldn't have happened before Mrs. Aaron, because Sichon was around then. Who says Sichon was around during Mrs. Aaron? Tana, we learned in a Brisa. It was all the same person. Who's Sichon? This fellow was called Sichon. Who Arad? He was called Arad. Who Canaan? He was called Canaan as well. He had 3 names. It's all one, the same person. So Vayishma Canaan Melech Arad is referring to Sichon as well. And he was around during Mrs. Aaron. Why 3 names? They all had meaning. Sichon because Shadaimel is Sayach Bamidbar. He was a good runner, like a Sayach, like a young colt, like a young horse, running in the Midbar. He was referred to as Vayishma Knani, Knan al Shem al Chus. That was the name of his malchus, of his reign, of his kingdom. Marshal says perhaps he ruled over people from Canaan. So that was the name of that was the title of the position, like a pharaoh, like an emperor. Uma Shmai, what was his real personal name? Arad. Shmai. Ikadamit, there's another version. Arad, he was called Arad, Shadaim al Aroid Bamidbar. He was equated to an Aroid, a wild donkey in the Midbar, so he had a strong body. Canaan, he was called Canaan al Shem al Chuse, was the name of the kingdom. Amashma, what's his real name? Sichon Shmoy. So in any case, it's all one and the same person. And we've proven our point because if he was around during Mrs. Aaron, so apparently that event took place before the event with Moshe Rabbeinu, where we see that Moshe Rabbeinu already struck down Sichon. So if Mrs. Aaron, which was an Av, took place before Moshe Rabbeinu's discussion, which took place in Shvat, and they're both in year 40 of Yetzias Mitzrayim, that proves that the year will not begin during Tishrei, rather starting from Nisan. Now, of course, the Gemara will ask, how do you know Nisan? It can't happen between Av and Shvat, otherwise you're going to have a turnover there. But it could happen Iyar, it could happen Sivan, it could happen after Shvat Adar. Be'ez Hashem, we're going to explore that tomorrow. Okay, let's do a brief chazor of today's daf. Arba Rosh HaShanna, we had 4 different types of Rosh Hashannas. We pretty much elaborated only on one of them, which was Echad B'Nisan Rosh Hashanah Malachim. We had Echad Be'el for Maaseh Behema, Echad B'Tishrei for many other things, Echad B'Shvat for the Rosh Hashanah Le'ilan, according to Beis Shammai, according to Beis Hillel, Chamisha Asher Bar. We discussed the reason why Chacham set a standard formula for Malachim to avoid confusion, to verify the validity of a shtar. The Gemara provided 5 applications of this concept. Number 1, if the king came into office during Adar, even though it's the last day of the year, come Nisan, he's already at year 2. If he was appointed B'Nisan, even though he's voted in by Adar, his year begins now. The king dies Adar and a new one is appointed right then, that year is a shared year and can be attributed to either king. Likewise, if the king died at the beginning of Nisan and a new king was appointed that year as well can be shared and attributed to both kings. However, if the king died Adar, next one was appointed Nisan, even though he was voted in Adar, and even though he's a Ben Melech, his reign, his count only begins during that year in which he entered office. How do we know that the Rosh Hashanah Malachim begins Nisan? We find a pasuk which equates counting of the kings to the counting of Yetzias Mitzrayim, and we prove that the year of Yetzias Mitzrayim begins Nisan from the psukim regarding Misas Aaron, and then the psukim regarding Moshe Rabbeinu, both taking place in year 40 of Yetzias Mitzrayim, one in Av, and the one later on in Shvat, both year 40. Apparently, Rosh Hashanah must not be Tishrei. Rather, it's Nisan, as we're going to see by Hashem in tomorrow's daf. Kol tov to you and much, much hatzlacha.